Jane.
I forgot your name.
Jane. I'm sorry, my thing is so thick on my name thing fell off.
And this Should we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this on?
Will be, just a moment.
It will be.
Yep.
Okay, while I wait for this to come on, I'm going to tell you that I've been very curious about George's last name. So I looked it up yesterday.
Ooh,
That was interesting. It's Greek.
absolutely.
So a Greek Baptist. And the interesting thing was what it said the name was, what it meant. It signifies a bright personality or perhaps someone who takes action. And I thought, that's George.
Surprise.
So you were named correctly, right? Yeah. But it is also interesting, you don't believe everything we read, right? But it said the first person with that name came to New York in 1920. Is that possible?
It is very possible. I thought it was 1910. But depending on who got
Yeah.
the statistics right or wrong.
Yeah.
My grandfather came from Turkey to Greece to New York. I thought around 1910.
Yeah, are there any other Lambrides in the country?
Yes, cousins.
Cousins.
Anybody with Lambrides, its longer form was Adalambros Jabajogo. The Lambros is the base core for Lambrides, and Lambros is very popular as a Greek name, but they lengthened it, and the rest is history.
You have a wonderful heritage, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready? Okay. So George is someone that may be known to some of you, for sure. I just asked him this morning where he was raised. He was raised on the East Coast. So anyway, George has served God, the church, and the larger community in many significant ways. Preparation for this service includes a history degree from Houghton College, a Master of Divinity from Denver Baptist Seminary, and a Master's in Counseling from the University of Oregon. He pastored 30 years in Pennsylvania, Oregon, and here in Ann Arbor at First Baptist. He was the first executive director of the Interfaith Roundtable of Washtenaw County and served 11 years as a resident Protestant chaplain at U of M Hospital. We're delighted to have George join us today to share his thoughts and his wisdom on ways to manage and face our fears. George?
Hang on. What buttons to push? Settings. Bingo. Hi.
Hi.
It is good to be back to First Press. My history with you goes back to Michael Lindahl's days, and Michael was part of the founding core group of clergy and religious leaders who formed the Interfaith Roundtable of Washtenaw County. And that chapter in my life became extremely beneficial. A Baptist. I was raised a conservative Baptist. Some people think that's redundant. But out of what we called at that time CBA, Conservative Baptist Association of America, I found way too restrictive, and so migrated over to what's called the American Baptist Churches USA, and that's where my pastoring and pastoral care existed for 25 years. So my contact with you has been through Melissa Ann, through some of your interns, residents, and my wife Cindy is obviously part of the congregation a whole lot more than I am. So, thank you for the welcome. I have been told that public speaking and handling snakes are in the same category. I've mastered the one, but not the other. I'll let you choose which one you think I'm better at. So, I've only planned about 30 minutes of content. So I'm depending on you all to fill in the other 20, depending on where, you stop at 12?
Yeah.
Thereabouts, 5 of. So be thinking about what I say that either irritates you, confuses you, affirms what you think and believe, and put together in this topic of helping people face their fears, and we'll make it a dialogue as we go along. To be human is to experience fear. Then the question is, what do we do with it? We will explore a series of slogans and quotes that provide us with lots of choices, some of them helpful and some not so helpful. I really like your theme. It's a great Advent theme, and as a clergy and as a preacher, I've done a lot of Advent themes over my 30 years of pastoring, but I've never picked this one. What does that say about me? I've chosen, the ones that I've had most fun with are the 3 wise women. That was a great Advent, and if David or Melissa Ann are listening, you can borrow these anytime. 3 wise women, that would be Mary, Anna, and I'm blanking on the third one. And then the other series that I had lots of fun with was, where do we find the birth of Jesus in Matthew, in Mark, in Luke, and in John? And John does not have a birth story for Jesus, but he comes at it through a deep theological reference. So that series was fun. But I've never gone down the road of helping people face their fears. So the Advent text is very clear and very simple. The angel of the Lord appeared both to Mary in the first part of Luke and then to the shepherds in the second part of Luke. The angel of the Lord appeared and said, "Fear not, for I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will come to all people." Those are 2 references of the over 100 references in both Old and New Testament that point blank, flat out just say, don't be afraid. I don't find that very helpful. So I'm paving the way for the direction of this balance between psychology and theology, because they both come at it, and you can read Scripture through either set of eyes. But if I were Mary, if I were one of the shepherds, I would say back to the angel, come on, get over it. Just for you, it's easy for you to say, so it would surface all of my phobias, all of my angel phobias that surface when I hear something as plain and as simple as that. So putting this together today caused me to explore all of those funny things about phobias. Everything can turn into a fear. A cluophobia is the fear of the dark. Cyberphobia is fear of computers. Entomophobia is fear of bugs. Entomology, obviously. Fear of balloons is globophobia. Fear of God or religion is theophobia. And xenophobia is the fear of foreigners. We've grown accustomed to that word a lot in the last...
Fear of what?
Fear of foreigners. We've grown a lot. We've been exposed to that a lot in the political scene over the last several years. So what I want to ask you is, ask yourself, what is your greatest fear? Don't say it out loud yet. What do you fear? Why did you come today? And so if you want to speak on behalf of anybody other than yourself, what's going through your mind? What are people afraid of?
Dementia.
Ooh, had not thought of that one. Okay, very realistic.
Failure.
Uh-huh.
Finances.
Comment. Fine. Uh-huh.
Democracy crumbling.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The whole national and global scene.
Mass shootings.
Uh-huh. The list is endless.
Mm-hmm.
What are the minor
less traumatic things that we get frightened over?
Slipping on the ice.
Yes.
That could be major.
For sure. Which?
Loneliness.
Loneliness. Okay, that's a biggie. Yeah.
Isolation.
Yeah. Okay.
Forgetting. Fear of forgetting and hurting people by mistake.
Uh-huh. Although those are very realistic. I can resonate with all of those. Reality TV has zeroed in to the point in which the program Fear Factor is something that I will never watch, don't like it. I only see it in ads that float across the screen when I have nothing else to do other than that. So what I'd like to do this morning is zero in on some slogans and some quotations, some of which we will recognize and be very familiar with, some will come out of nowhere, to help us navigate this tension between what's just downright realistic that we deal with day in and day out, that coping skills and faith may help us deal with, versus those things that really we're afraid of, and the chances are those things are never going to happen. So this tension, I think, in our own personal territory of how to deal with this is I'm going to approach on the basis of what have a lot of other people said, what are some of the quotations that are popular, and then some that I absolutely fall in love with. And you'll see those as I mention them in the course of our discussion. So Psychology Today, several years ago, had an article on fear in which it said, "Fear is a vital response to both physical and emotional danger. If we don't feel it, we couldn't protect ourselves from legitimate threats. But often we fear situations that are far from life and death and thus hang back for no good reason." And that tension and that distinction is something that we'll play with in the course of our discussion. So here's my favorite cousin. Scrabble. And just an overarching summary of what frightens most of us. So, first quote. Do you agree with this? Feelings are neither right nor wrong. They just are. That comes out of my psych background. And when I first heard it, I thought, I'm not there. I think there are legitimate feelings that are right or wrong. But the more you push me, I will say, no, they're neither right nor wrong. They just are.
But the assumptions behind the feelings could be wrong.
Most definitely, and I'll unpack that a little bit as well. But I think if we can settle in on the premise that feelings are neither right nor wrong, then we move away from being so judgmental. Gee, you shouldn't feel that way. How often have we heard that said to us or about us? So, jealousy, greed, egotism. There's a lot of fertile soil for those to be unpacked, to get at the assumptions that are underneath those feelings, to still resonate with feelings are neither right nor wrong, they merely are. Fears don't exist anywhere except the mind. That's a brain teaser. The good book does say, as a person thinks, so is he or she. And so our biblical religion is grounded in that same premise, that what's going on in our thought process, how we deal with the information coming in and how we process internally, is a matter of the mind. And that helps me as one who wants to fight the fears and do something to mitigate those. What's going on? Self-talk was a popular slogan years ago. I forget what psychological framework it fell into, but it is going on up here. And so if we can grab hold of the assumptions and the process that is going on, we'll have a better chance of coping productively with our fears.
Although, George, can I just add,
Yeah.
I feel like so much of it is in our body. I mean, not to separate the mind as part of the body, but sometimes we overemphasize the mind when it's stored in other places in our bodies.
Good, thanks. I had not thought that thoroughly, and that's a good thing to explore. How often have we heard in sermons and in slogans, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom"? Out of my background in the conservative movement, that was a popular slogan. I mean, you can fear people to death lest they burn in hell. And yet, if you do a word study of what the Hebrew is behind fear of the Lord, it is not this intimidating, powerful force that is destructive and judgmental. Fear in this context has much more of the commentary of being a religious person. That's different than the intimidating, fearful, threatening kind of definition that could emerge from a text like this. It's just not there. So the word study on the word fear is helpful to unpack that one with values and a religious perspective, yes, theistic in this context, but Proverbs 9:10 does not try to scare people into anything or anyone. And I think that's a good differentiation to keep in mind. Focus on where you want to go, not on what you fear. Some of you might know that my wife and I have adopted a boat for the last 11 seasons. We live on a boat in Muskegon for 3 to 4 months out of the year. And Cindy in particular has just, for somebody who doesn't even swim, she has just fallen in love with Lake Michigan and all the water that we get the chance to experience. What that has done for me is the only books that I've been reading for the last 4 years have to do with water. The most fascinating was the first woman to row across the Atlantic Ocean. At the age of 21, she made it within 300 miles of France, and some major accident occurred. She flipped over so many times. And it was a 21-foot rowboat, rowing, not sailing, but rowing across. So because she didn't finish, she took a year off and did it going the other direction from France over to our continent. But the reason why I say that is that co-captains, Catherine Gonzalez, has a whole chapter on her fears. And just at the beginning of the book, of this chapter, she says, "Fear is ever present in our cruising life. Some fears, like my fears of sailing by myself during the night passages, start strong and subside as we gain experience, confidence, and competence. Others, like running into a surprise storm, are persistent but not likely to occur if we stay vigilant." Just commentary. A fun book. Their history is fascinating. But focusing on where you want to go. So that's what I gained from her experience with her husband sailing from, I think they started out in California and ended up in the islands way to the west. But to keep that in mind, to keep where are we going? How do we stay focused? Not on our fears, but where we want to end up. Next. This one has often been credited to Winston Churchill, but the more I dug, it's an FDR quote. Fear is nothing. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. And in FDR's first inaugural address in 1933, he tried to encourage the country to deal constructively with the Depression, deal constructively with post-First World War I issues, and so it resonated very well with citizens in our country. I don't make much of it, but it's a popular quote. The one that is credited to Churchill is fear is a reaction, courage is a decision. Conceptually, mentally, intellectually, I get that. And that may help me to zero in and focus on how I handle the things that come across my path. Ultimately, we know deeply that the other side of every fear is a freedom. MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., is a good example of that. There's a lot that's been written about his emotional coping with all the threats, the dangers, the threats to his life. And he did become quite depressed, quite frightened over what would happen to his life. But he pressed through, knowing that on the other side of his success would be freedom for the African American population. Next, the scariest moment is always just before you start. After that, things can only get better. I would say that of both bungee jumping and skydiving. Did anyone see the news? I think it was yesterday or the day before, the two men that were jumping out of the plane, and the first guy, his parachute got, I think it was the local news, I don't think it was national news, got caught up in the wing of the plane, and so he's dangling. How fast a plane's going, what, 150, 140, 30 miles an hour, little Cessna. And he falls, and his lines get caught up in the wing of the plane. And so here he is dangling. His buddy is looking out the window, so there must be a separate pilot, so two of them. And the guy was able, so went the report, to cut 12 lines, strings, ropes that were keeping him tied to that wing of the plane, so much so that then he could fall and open up his second follow-up safety parachute.
He said if he had not had that knife, he would have passed.
Absolutely.
It saved his life that he was carrying that.
Who carries a knife when they're skydiving?
Good thing he did, though.
I'll put it on my list then.
Yeah.
Well, next time you skydive, take a
Yeah,
knife.
absolutely. It's on my list, yeah.
Well, I'm frightened of skydiving, so I will not. And bungee jumping, you'll not see me in either one of those recreational habits. Madame Curie, world famous scientist, said, "Nothing in life is to be feared; it's only to be understood." Okay. Rather mundane, but helpful.
It's consistent with what your earlier quote about it's in the mind.
Uh-huh.
Because understanding would foster the mind,
Yes.
but might not do anything with the trauma in your body.
You're ahead of me. Yeah, exactly. She won Nobel Prizes in physics and chemistry. She was a specialist in either discovering or dealing directly with radioactivity. And some people are of the opinion that unbeknownst to her, that exposure to radioactivity was largely responsible for her death. That's not been...
She should have feared radioactivity.
Yes. Yeah.
Not trying to just understand it.
The more she understood, the more she'd fear it, right?
Yes. Don't let the fear of what could happen make nothing happen. So you're stuck at home. You want to drive to your relative's house for Christmas, and yet it's snowing outside. And you're fearful. So you just lock down in the kitchen and don't go anyplace. When, to all intents and purposes, it's only 2 inches of snow. You probably could make it, but you're paralyzed because you're frightened or afraid of snow, some of which might be appropriate. But if it paralyzes me so that nothing can happen, you sit home by yourself and the rest is history.
I feel like this is one sort of relating to the fear of dementia. I mean, as I'm getting older, it feels like the rumination about what could happen is getting broader. And it makes your life smaller, you know, which then contributes to fear, you know, to dementia and things. I mean, this is like fighting the fear of getting older. I feel like it's one of the biggest challenges.
That's why they save it to the end, to the last chapter. Well said. Yeah, we do take a lot in. Yeah, this chapter in my life is far more challenging than anything I've done in all my life. I'll elaborate a little bit on that in a second. Yes?
It does also raise, thinking of your illustration as well, that there can be alternatives into our fear, or alternative courses of action. So using your example of staying at home because of fear, well, it might open up other possibilities. You could connect with other people who you haven't seen perhaps, and it could be enriching. So I think it's sometimes that there's not a singular, there might not be a singular response to fear, so you might not have to do that thing of which you're fearful, but I think it becomes a question of, are there alternative courses of action that themselves have a lot of potential and could be, whether it's affirming or ways to overcome or constructively deal with your fear.
I like that. I'll put some slogans and quotations around that because I'm on that page as well. Yeah. Then a little bit more substantively, there are two, let's get this. There are two basic motivating forces, fear and love, so said John Lennon. And as a result, his writing of the song Imagine really exposes his value system, his sense of what's important, believing that people have far more in common than we do in difference. He looked for ways for uniting and bringing people together, because the opposite of fear is love. And that first came across my mind as a young Protestant clergy person being raised in a denomination and in a congregation which did not talk much about the first and second greatest commandments. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. But when I ran across, and this goes back, 40 or 50 years now, Jerry Jampolsky's Love is Letting Go of Fear, I had never, ever in my religious background come across that. That was a shocker. In terms of my formation and theology and world perspectives, where did that come from? Oh, I guess I need to revisit biblical texts and Christian theology through a different set of eyes. And that was a turning point for me. So much so that I love the quote, love is seeded into the universe. It's baked in. It's one of the givens which allow us to have options and alternatives.
And George, the biblical verse I love more than any other perhaps is perfect love casts out fear. And
that one?
It's such a wonderful, oh well, so sorry. I jumped the gun here. But that is one of my favorite, if not my favorite verse.
Why?
Because like you, I was raised in a very fearful religion growing up. And it's not a happy way to be in the world or to live or to know God. You can't really know God out of fear. So you have it right there. Yeah.
And the other side of the coin is that text can often be used as a proof text. Why are you struggling so much in life? Perfect love casts out all fear. Yeah, but my love is not perfect. Right. So, give me a break. Let me spend some time on that side of the field. But let me also acknowledge that I'm a growing, maturing, hopefully progressing person that is incorporating the principles of love, both divine and human, so that it can cast out fear. We're on the same page, Nancy. Let's see. Mandela's 27 years of a life sentence in South Africa caused him to say, courage is not the absence of fear, but triumph over it. Well said, Nelson. We've covered that one. And then finally in this sort of spiritual warm-up, our warm-up exercises, I have often quoted to my family members, feel the fear and do it anyway. And the one family member that I have said that to way too often just said to me recently, but Dad, I can't. I get that. You know, because whether it's absorbed in my body, whether it's the depression makes it impossible to just be so flat out simple, feel the fear and do it anyway. I still like the quote, but its application and its implementation can be challenging for sure. So, let's shift over. Out of those 16 quotes, take one of them home, put it on the refrigerator, and play with it over the next couple of weeks. But now for a little bit heavier lifting. John Claypool, a Southern Baptist. When he was divorced, I think he was probably 50 or 55. Southern Baptist Convention basically threw him out of the convention and he became an Episcopal priest. I've followed John's history for years. He doesn't know it, but he's been one of my mentors who has helped shape who I am today. And he uses this reference in a sermon that he preached years and years ago. I don't know whether he's still alive or not. I'll try to find that out. Fear knocked at the door, and faith answered. And there was no one there. And he uses it to say, picture yourself lying in bed, hearing somebody knock at the door. How can that be that there's nothing there? There's always something there. Diseases, accidents, wars, all kinds of catastrophes. So our sensitive alarm system that alerts us to the presence of threats, all of that kicks in when I hear the knock at the door. You can picture yourself walking through the woods and hearing a sound of a snake slithering up next to you. You either flee or fight it.
Or freeze.
Yes. However, as Claypool points out, there's a whole other reality and principle by which to live. And he begins to explore that in some detail. Fears that arise from within are different than those that are external fears. Oftentimes they're created in our own imagination and only make matters worse. I read recently of a funeral of a young, middle-aged man who committed suicide because his parents had died of cancer. He woke up one morning with a rude awakening. There was a lot of pain in his right side. He felt that he was going to die of the same thing that his parents died of. So he never went to the doctor. He dealt with it for a few weeks and eventually committed suicide over the belief that he was going to go down the same road that his parents. An autopsy was performed after his death only to discover that that growth was benign. So he created his own danger, his own fear, his own imagination caused him to panic instead of going to the door, opening it up, and determining whether cancer was on the other side of that door or whether his anxiety had created this uncertainty that only made matters worse. Unfortunately, our original parents, and you can define that in any way you feel comfortable defining it, but our original parents responded to the original temptation by going to the door, by not going to the door either, so that we have a long history of choosing fear over love and hope. Dr. John DeFore is known for his own slogan that we have to unlearn and relearn what all of us struggle with. Carl Menninger, out of the world of psychology, some of you will be familiar with that name, had made this statement that fear is one of the early emotions that we as children, babies, pick up shortly after coming into this world. And he said that those fears demonstrate themselves in the fear of falling, the fear of loud noises, and the fear of abandonment. I can relate to all three of those. And they come on the scene very early in our human experience. I've been trying to read and follow some of the Advent devotionals that your staff has been producing over the last week as Advent comes. It was Jim Anderson who spoke of his father-in-law. Maybe you read some of these beautiful devotionals as well. Jim makes the comment that his father-in-law frequently would ask him, "Have you checked the brakes on your car recently?" Out of the blue. So Jim's father-in-law must have had some experience back there where his brakes failed, and now he brings that into the present and becomes a little bit annoying by too frequently asking the same question. But each of these three grow into adult versions of each of those. So there's plenty of opportunity to go to the door and see what's on the other side, maybe nothing. So how much of our anxiety comes from legitimate fears, and how much of it comes from projecting what could happen but probably won't? So I think that's really the tug and pull in this whole area of the reality versus the projection. And here is where our biblical religion really shines. In my personal and family life, we're up against some overwhelming unknowns. My own slogan for myself and for my family is to return to the origins of everything, where the theologians have said that God created, and you may be familiar with this phrase, ex nihilo, out of nothing. So the bottom line of our biblical religion is that God is at work, and He has not stopped creating something out of nothing. That the one who is on the other side of the door is really for us and not against us. And my favorite quote, which I will embrace until the day I die, is, "We don't know enough about the future to be thoroughly pessimistic." And the more you know Cindy, my wife, and the more you know me, I'm the pessimist and she's the optimist. And so this speaks to me that creating something out of nothing is God's way of surprising us from the beginning to the end. Someone else has put it this way: the gospel is really good news, all other evidence to the contrary. So one of my kids is overwhelmed with far more than anyone should be overwhelmed. Fear of living alone. Whoops. Fear of living alone. Fear of her handling her finances, having health problems, disabilities, and that's just for starters. as a father of this child, how do I convey and model that the God who loves us is not done creating something out of nothing without succumbing just to pious platitudes? And I'm a work in progress at that, trying to figure out how to be that and how to do that in such a way that she feels supported and loved and listened to in a way which will help her move along and cope productively with all that she's got on her plate. One more fear. You know this one. I could not pass up the opportunity of putting it in writing and saying it out loud that I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. So whether you're curious, fearful, ambivalent, there's a lot to learn under this category of facing our ends regardless of how long or how short we are on this planet. As a hospital chaplain, I was assigned back in the day when it was the University of Michigan Hospital and not Michigan Medicine. In those days, 5D was surgical intensive care and 6D was medical intensive care. And I was assigned to both, and we had 2.5 deaths per week. I always wanted to be the half that survived. But statistically, the people that play with those numbers would quote that not very often, but frequently. And so I've walked in those shoes. I've gone down that lane. I've experienced the pain and the suffering and watched the emotions of all different kinds of people and families. Amazing different perspectives on how they ease up towards the end. How acceptance versus denial was always a struggle in most of the families that I dealt with. And then to distinguish between those folk that were dealing with this with all their secular strength versus with all their religious resources. And I found many people outside of the religious realm that did a wonderful job in facing the end. That was not always the case. And then many religious folk like us that would capture the strength of who God is and who their Messiah is, their Christ is, and use that in ways that were pretty amazing. I've handled hundreds of funerals over the years and gone to seminars and workshops and classes. I filled in, Cindy got her degree here in social work, and she had a class on death and dying, and she got sick the morning that she was supposed to go, so I said I'd go for her. Little did I realize that the course was death and dying, so I knew what I was getting into, and arrived to see a casket on the floor of the classroom, and one of the assignments was for each person in the class to take their turn to climb into the casket and lay there and begin to anticipate the feelings of what is it to leave this world out into the next. It's an experience I feel to this day. Death and dying is just part of the experience. Thomas Lynch, the funeral home director up in Milford, author, poet, very brilliant, compassionate guy. He had come to Michigan Medicine on several occasions, had workshops for clergy. And the thing that I take away from one of his workshops was when it's time for the casket to be carried from the funeral home out into the hearse, he hoped that the people that were asked to do that were the grandchildren. I had to unpack that a little bit. To the degree that we can embrace death as part of life, and that young grandchildren of the ages of 14, 19, 25, 32 need to be hands-on, even to the point of those are the ones that are to toss the shovels of dirt onto the casket. Pretty dramatic. I remember him saying that, and it has left a deep, indelible impression. In this stage of my life, I think I've moved more to the chapter of curiosity than fear. When you think about it, billions, not millions, but billions of people have crossed over and gotten to the other side, whatever you believe that other side to be. So why am I going to be the exception? I might go kicking and screaming, but I will make it to the other side, because there's one on the other side as a heavenly parent who will welcome us with open arms and treat us rightly. I've used this following metaphor many times, but only recently did I discover that its origin is from Pearl Buck in her writings, The Big Wave. So I'm going to borrow it again, but make my own version out of it. None of us can remember our time in our mother's womb, but that doesn't mean it's not significant. So picture yourself quietly lying in a pool of water, minding your own business, and all of a sudden, the angel of the Lord, not unlike the angel that appeared before Mary and the shepherds, shows itself up out of nowhere, and after some pleasantries and finding out from you how you're doing, then turns its attention to the subject of leaving. And says to you, what do you think about getting out of here in the next few days and to explore a world about which you know absolutely nothing? And you say, no way, Jose. I like it where I am. I'm doing just fine. Leave me alone. To which the angel responds, in a month or so, you will leave the comfort of this place out into a world about which you know nothing and I know a lot. And so, when full term arrived, you experience what it means to be born, with the accompanying crying and screaming out into a world about which you know nothing. And so for some, 70, for some a little bit longer, for some not that long by any means, you were alive with all the wonder and the challenges and the surprises that come with nature, earth, family, relationships, purpose, existence. Just think of what we are experiencing visually. That we see color, audibly, that we hear the honking of a horn. Love when we experience the hug of a companion or a relative. And on and on and on. This is what we are experiencing now as the gift of life. And then some a few years and other a full 100, find yourself getting ready to leave this place, this planet. And in the quiet of leaving, an angel of the Lord comes to you and says, how about you get ready to leave this place to go to a destination about which you know absolutely nothing. And you say to yourself, I think I've heard that before. What's going on here? And so in the fullness of time, you left this familiar place out into one which was new, will be new, different, and divine. And we call it death. And so we've been down this road before. We just don't realize it. And in crossing over, we can trust, just like we did on our first entry, because that heavenly parent is waiting for us with infinite love and infinite life. So trust the process. And I say that to me as much as to you. Trust the process. For all the angels are saying pretty much the same thing. You knock on the door, go ahead, knock on the door and see what's on the other side. You might just get surprised, but don't be afraid. That's what the angel said. Go to the door. Faith will answer, and so will the one who wants to share life with you and with me infinitely. And that does me good. And with that, it has frozen. How about that? Good spot to stop. You got 5 minutes. What would you say to the angel who came to Mary and to the shepherds? Our response might be very different. Yes.
There's a play out there called the Butterfingered Angels.
Butterfingered angels?
Fingered Angels. And he came to Mary and said that she was going to be the mother of Jesus. And she said, no way. I don't want to. I'm not going to do that. And then the play goes on from there.
Nice.
That was very interesting.
Excellent. Yes.
Very real.
Yeah.
She was very real.
I can see myself enjoying it immensely. What would you say to the angels?
Nancy, do you have a big microphone? Oh, I don't need it. I was just.
Yes, it's here. It might need to be turned on.
Anyone else?
Well, mine sounds kind of silly, but I was a third grader, and my parents took me to Big Boy to have this discussion. Do you want to continue in the school you're at, or go to this new school? And I said, I want to be with my friends. I want to stay at my old school. And they said, too bad, you're going to the new school.
Oh.
And I felt betrayed. I felt like, if I didn't have a choice, why did you act like I had a choice? But anyways, the first day I got to the new school, I loved it. It was wonderful. I spent, it was great. So sometimes you say no, but wiser ones know what you need.
Well said. I like it.
Years ago, I went on a whitewater rafting trip, and I've always loved canoeing and kayaking and anything involving being on the water. So I thought, this will be great. I'll love it. And that particular year, the river was really high. So instead of a level 4, it went up to a 5. So they made us sign this thing, like, are you sure you want to do this? I thought, I got this in the bag, no problem. Well, when we came to the first rapids, I was terrified. I thought, you know what? I had so much fear in me. I just thought, I never should have done this. I was really scared. But then we got through the first rapids, and I thought, wow, that was exhilarating. And then, each rapid that came up, I got more courage and, got past my fear. And when we were done, I said to the guide, can we do this again? And she cracked up. She says, you are too cute. She says, you got to come back tomorrow. But I really was terrified, and
What a beautiful
turned out to be really fun.
Excellent. What state was the river?
Pennsylvania, Ohio,
Okay.
Ohio River.
Okay.
It was really fun. Did you do that?
Times.
Isn't it great? I would love to do that again.
So I might be going in a different direction. I'm not sure it totally answers the question, but before we left, I wanted to leave one thought about fear, and that is about how we infect each other, like that, whether it's in our head or it's in our bodies. Like, the research that shows
if you are in the room, let's say you're getting a medical procedure and it's painful, if you have someone in the room that you love or you have a relationship with, the pain will show up in their brains like the pain is in your brain. And so I have found it really helpful to be around people who are really calm, and could they infect me in a really good way. And so I was thinking again about what you said about your daughter, or time when I've had my daughter in the hospital and been really fearful. I'm so grateful that I've learned meditation, because it calms me, that then transfers to others. And similarly, so anyway, I get the punchline is thinking relationally about who do we surround ourselves with and how can that help us with our fear. So I don't know if Mary was totally alone, going back to Jesus, but maybe she had friends that were helping her be less afraid, besides the angel. So, anyway.
Well said. Thank you.
Maybe this isn't too constructive, but that notion of the infectiousness of fear made me think of the Lenin quote, and which I had a little hard time accepting, of fear and love, and I thought of it more elementally as hate and fear, but then came around thinking of the societal dimensions of fear, not just the psychological ones, and how, and I think only more so than ever, how fear is the vehicle for and pretext for hate, and how it's always been the case, but I think only more intensely, but how fear is stirred and manufactured and manipulated and exploited for profit. Whether that be financial profit or what we see, and it's always been the case, but political profit as well, and how insidious and infectious, that kind of fear. So it goes beyond exploiting that psychological fear for real social harm.
That's helpful. Thank you. Well said. Just about 12. This is part of, and I'm reminded.
Did you want to say something?
This is part of the faith formation series, and I think that the content for the whole Advent series in terms of dealing with fear is just a beautiful entree to deepening, expanding, and elaborating on what my faith is about. For me, it's and I said this to Nancy earlier. I can read the Bible and sacred texts through my psychological experience and my psychological understandings, or my theological understandings, or both, and see them compatible, and in some cases not compatible at all. And so my first reaction was when Nancy said what the theme was, don't be afraid. I did the same thing to Mary, come on! But having explored its other dimensions and its other connections to what life looks like, it has made it very productive for me. So thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you very much, George. We really appreciate your taking the time all to prepare and to be with us. Little gift for you.
Thank you.
And blessings on your Advent and your Christmas with your family.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.